destinations, one of the main ones and most iconic ones being North Korea, but recently branched out to other places such as Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, basically all of those places that you hear about more often in the media in a generally quite negative and terrifying light than a travel and tourism perspective. And I think once you start traveling to these places, or at least seeing someone travel to these places, one of the main things that you realize is, I won't say that these places are safe, because I think that safety is relative. However, they can be safe and you can travel to them safely. Honestly, these are some of the best people that you'll ever meet in the world.
Well,
Yeah.
welcome to the app. This is I guess first time for everything.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you so much.
but yeah, this is I have been using it, and I was first I used Zoom, and then I used Google Meet, and now I'm using Riverside, and I feel like it's much better for like
Okay,
clipping and everything else. But people still do
interesting.
seem to have issues like getting into it sometimes.
Yeah, the app was literally just taking me from this bit to this bit to this bit, and it was very slow, very counterintuitive. It's fine,
Okay,
but
well, glad to know I pay for
yeah.
a slow and counterintuitive platform these days. We should get rid of this application. But Zoe, welcome back to the Cameron Brown Show for a second episode. We kind of briefly talked about it on the last one. I was like, this would be so much fun to have you back on in the future. So thank you for returning for a second episode.
Yeah, here I am. Thanks so much for having me back.
I guess
A
I
lot
didn't
has
scare you off on the
happened.
first one.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. So just to give a recap of who you are, what you're doing. I've given this kind of introduction before, but I'm going to let you take it away and just describe what you do. And then I've got a couple, not tough questions, but fun kind of follow-up questions that I'm sure I know you've answered a million times, but just to kind of explain what you are doing currently, and then we'll proceed from there.
Sure. So I'm Zoe, originally from the UK, but haven't lived there for the past over a decade now or so. I currently live in Taiwan, where I do my PhD in politics, actually. And I also work in adventure tourism, traveling to unusual destinations. One of the main ones and most iconic ones being North Korea, but recently branched out to other places such as Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, basically all of those places that you hear about more often in the media in a generally quite negative and terrifying light than a travel and tourism perspective. Yeah, that's me.
Great introduction. And you have a wonderful online presence, and you're covering everything there. And I said this last time too. Surprisingly, very open with your travels as well, which for me was I was a little bit surprised. Like I don't know how she's able to do all this. I think that's one of the biggest kind of the moments where people realize like, wow, she's a female traveling into these countries and taking other people into these countries as well. So I guess for the individual that is on our side of the world is thinking, okay, these places we've heard all these terrible things about. They do have humanitarian issues. What maybe would maybe change somebody's perspective on these locations and what you do, and then why do you do this as well?
Oh, very good question. So I think the biggest thing that can change your perspective on these areas, number one, if you see any of my social media channels, is simply the fact that you can visit there. The fact that you can visit these countries is crazy for most people. I mean, North Korea is a big one, and a lot of people also get, really amazed at the fact that you can even take photos and videos. Most people think I'm a spy with some kind of extra access because the general narrative is you can't take any photos or videos inside North Korea. So people think I'm working for the state, something like that. And I think once you realize that, oh, okay, some of my perceptions about North Korea are not true because you inherently, obviously, can take photos of North Korea, to a certain extent, then people start to question that a little bit. And then I think once you start traveling to these places, or at least seeing someone travel to these places, one of the main things that you realize is kind of, I won't say that these places are safe, because I think that safety is relative and it is, a bit irresponsible. It's a little irresponsible to say that these countries are safe. However, they can be safe and you can travel to them safely.
Right.
And once you do go there, for the very first second, a lot of your perceptions are changed simply by the people. Honestly, these are some of the best people that you'll ever meet in the world. These people that we are taught to be fearful of, even if you see, you know, if you see the Arabic language or the Arabic script around, people start to have this innate fear or something. And I think these are just some of the most wonderful, welcoming, beautiful people in the whole world. Yeah.
And that's the angle that, from our conversations, obviously you're trying to shed light on more than anything.
Yes.
This is obviously not a pro Afghanistan. This is not a pro North Korea conversation. This is not a pro anybody. This is a pro humanity conversation, and shedding light on the
Exactly.
fact that there are still good people in these parts of the world, regardless of the propaganda that's shed about the government, which the government is completely separate of the people to a
Exactly.
certain degree.
Y-
But I say that just to say I think as of late, as we start talking about different topics like this, there are certain organizations, entities, countries, current politics, et cetera, a lot of things going on. And I like to talk about all of it. I like to learn people's perspectives, understand why people do things, like asking these hard questions. And in doing so, it definitely sheds a different light on different situations. And I think it opens people's minds to different scenarios they would not have considered before. But at the end of the day, for you, once again, I kudos to you on just shedding light on the humanity aspects, regardless of these places that we might not agree with everything, obviously, but there are still humans. There's a human element to this, that needs to be shared, and you're doing a wonderful job of doing that.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you so much. Yeah, for me, a country is never a sum of its politics, and we tend to forget that because these highly politicized countries, we only hear about the politics of them.
right,
We don't hear about the people, the history, the culture, all of this. That needs to be highlighted too.
absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of politics, you mentioned your PhD. I think we kind of hit on this briefly a
Yes.
little bit before. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit more? What you're covering currently?
Yeah, so I actually work on North Korea in the media. So entirely relevant to what we're speaking about right now, actually, because that is, my PhD. A lot of people ask me, what are you going to do with it? How is it? Are you going to go into academia? All of this. To be honest, I have no real plan. My PhD is not a means to an end. It's a way to develop my career further because working in, funnily enough, I started studying politics because when I started working in North Korea, I wanted to ignore the politics. I wanted to get away from the politics and I just wanted to focus on the people. But I realized honestly that this was naive of me. And in order to be able to justifiably ignore the politics, you have to first have a very good grasp on the politics and you have to understand it in order to ignore it in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. But
We have to
yeah, my
understand
my
what you're ignoring, and why
exactly.
you
So
agree and or disagree with something, which requires a lot of depth and a lot of research and a lot of knowledge on anything.
yes.
And people, this is I'll go back. This is my biggest frustration as of late. It requires actually focusing on these things. So you wonder, why are you focusing on that thing? It's like, because I'm truly intrigued. Like, I'm interested as to why this has
Mm,
occurred and how things progressed over the years. How did certain organizations come to be, especially those that, I've a lot of it has been for me as of late, terrorist organizations. How did that particular
mm,
terrorist organization that we define as a terrorist organization turn into a terrorist organization? What
mm,
battle led to that particular organization becoming a quote unquote terrorist organization, and who
mhm.
identifies them as such, and so on and so forth. And I think that's just very relevant with everything that's going on around the world and every single entity. It's also way too complex and way too much to keep up with. So for people like you, I'm like, okay, can you tell me more about North Korea? Because I know what I know, but I don't know everything.
Yeah, I mean, no, kind of ignoring this political side is just ignorance in a way, unless you then have this deep and grasp and understanding on it. But at the same time, this political stuff is not what I'm interested in and not what I want to get involved in. It's the people that I want to highlight. And so with my PhD, what I'm basically doing is looking at all these things that I'm interested in and all these things that I try and do with my social media, which is look at how the media impacts our understanding about North Korea. But that's kind of the base level stuff. I mean, that's a general understanding that you and I both have as well, is that the media has a way to manipulate us into thinking in a certain way. Everyone kind of knows that to a certain extent. What I'm interested in is how this then affects the humanitarian and the political consequences of this. So, the humanitarian side, maybe, for example, a lot of people seem to care about the North Korean issue, but how many actually donate to a charity that helps towards this? Very few. And in terms of the politics side of things, how does this media have an effect on affecting political opinion or shifting policy as well? So that's what I'm kind of really interested in.
Speaking of organizations, what kind of organizations can you speak freely about that? What kind of organizations would you suggest that people look into that are maybe good ones to donate to support?
Honestly, now it's tricky because there were quite a few organizations working in North Korea with solid involvement. There were a few organizations that had actual offices inside of North Korea, but now since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of them have closed down.
Got it.
But maybe it would be good if I could like get a collection together to give you some links so that you can give people
Absolutely.
a place to go to. Yeah, so I'll get that.
Absolutely.
I'll get that for you.
No, I
Yeah,
think that would be wonderful, and I think that's the biggest thing with like donating to any organization, especially nowadays.
of course.
You're like, oh, it seems like they're doing wonderful work because they have a great social media. You're like, but what are they actually doing? Like, where does that money actually go?
Absolutely.
And we find this oftentimes. Any org, once again, this is across the board. But you're like, okay, there was $1 billion that was sent to this organization, but 950 million of it went towards the people to support the organization. Only 50 million actually went to do the actual work.
Okay, but that actually, strikes up an interesting ethical question. Is it worth it then? Even
Right.
if only 5% of the aid is going to the right people, at least it's better than 0%. But then, of course, the rest of the money is helping to prop up the exact thing that is creating the problems in the first place. You get into this whole
Right.
big ethical dilemma. I don't know the right answer. There is no right answer to it. It's just
I guess the
what
right
your
answer is:
ethics
is there
goes
another
on.
organization that's taking 900 million and then giving 100 million to the cause? I guess in that case,
Yeah.
that other organization would be the one that you should be propping up versus the one that's taking the larger percentage. But but yes, that is exactly right. It's an ethical dilemma to a certain degree, but you want to support, but you're not going to be the boots on the ground personally doing it. So at least 5%
Yeah.
of your dollars are going towards something good.
And interestingly, I feel that a lot of people, you say you're not going to be the boots on the ground yourself, and this may not be true for North Korea, but thinking about other countries, this is something that I genuinely see has a big impact when you are a tourist and when you are in these countries. Helping to prop up the economy, spending money in these countries is an actual way of making boots on the ground kind of help. For example, when it's harder to make this argument for North Korea because a lot of the places that you go to or a lot of things are state owned. They do run as normal businesses anyway, but it's harder to make the argument than, for example, if you are in Afghanistan and you buy your food from local restaurants and you get your souvenirs from a women-run, carpet factory or something like this, and you are actively giving to the community. And that's why I believe in ethical tourism in in these destinations that are ethically questionable. You can travel there, and it's not really ethical travel that you do because you just want to take videos and you just want to make money for social media and then you don't really learn anything and you just come out and it's just there to make money. But if you go there as an ethical tourist, you give to the local community in everything that you do by being there, a good representative of your country. You can be a good ambassador when you return and tell your people, people from your country about that country. Yeah, actually, they're really nice. You can encourage more people to go. Then it's more ethical. And you can actually make a real significant positive change when you visit these countries.
Got it. Well, I guess that would be as it relates to North Korea specifically, if only 5% of my money at a shop was actually going to the shop owner, which I don't know what the actual split is, then it wouldn't feel as personally ethical, I guess, because I know that the majority of my dollars aren't going towards what I want them to go towards at the end of the day. But that is also personally dependent upon what you're looking to do with your money and the organizations you're
Yeah.
looking to support and prop up at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah.
but you also shared some information on the marathon recently. When was the last time they had the marathon?
So the marathon ran in 2025,
Yep.
and then prior to that, it last ran in 2019. So it didn't run all throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and then started again last year. just for 1 year and then stopped again this year, unfortunately. I was meant to be there in a couple of weeks.
And that was due to everything that's going on around the world.
Honestly, it could be a factor. The reason that we were given was it was due to some reasons. That is the actual official reason that we were given.
Like a one-line
And I
email that came out.
honestly, like we published this email online and it literally says due to some reasons. And this is just really highlighting the difficulty of working in a country like North Korea. They really don't make it easy for us. And they don't operate like many other countries may operate. They don't understand how significant a cancellation this is for many. We had over 500 people wanting to go and run in the Pyongyang marathon. Obviously, it doesn't bode very well for them. But what can you do? It's part of the fun in quotation marks of working in the country, and I think it's a big shame. Whether it has to do with the current situation, honestly, we have no idea. It's all guesswork, educated guesswork. And if I were to make an educated guess, I would say that it's probably a mix of everything. North Korea is still highly anti-germ, let's say. So any single sighting of a new disease or a new thing that's cropping up, like even what was the one in Bangladesh recently that had a few cases of something, I cannot remember the name.
I'm not sure, but I believe we had,
Yeah.
well, just to speak locally, apparently cases
Mm.
of measles pop up in South Carolina, which is
Okay.
a new thing for us. But I just obviously new diseases or old diseases tend to pop up and kind of come and go as time goes on.
Yeah.
But that does make sense though, that they would be very anti-germ, I guess, as a
Yes,
way of
and
control, I guess. But also maybe they are truly just very anti-germ, or
I
is it more
think
of
a
a
little
control
bit of
thing?
both.
Okay.
I think it's a bit of
Yeah.
both, and I do genuinely believe that there are very few benefits for North Korea, for having so many foreigners enter the country, and that's why I have less of a positive outlook on North Korea tourism in general over the next few years, because the scales have kind of tipped in how it benefits North Korea, i.e., it doesn't really benefit North Korea.
At all. Especially so didn't they recently release, or they opened a park of sorts as well? We talked about this in the last episode,
Yes,
and
yes,
so now
yeah.
that'll be empty as well.
No, well, that
Locals
park has
maybe.
been being exactly. It's been being built for years, and whilst the original plan of the park may have been more directed at foreign tourism, it's definitely now the opening was never for foreign tourists. It's for local tourists, and there is a rising middle class coming out of Pyongyang, and there are people who can go on holiday, and that's basically who it's aimed at.
When you say rising, can you kind of explain that a little bit more? What does that look like for what does rising look like for North Korea?
Do you want numbers and data,
I know.
or?
I'm curious. I just have no idea what it relates to, as it relates to a middle class in North Korea. What is your research? What is your perspective of what that
Mm.
looks like?
I mean, I think the first thing that people don't really recognize is that, North Korea does have a middle class. And whilst that may not be representative of the entire country, just like in many other countries, there are people who can afford nice things in the country. It's not as if every single person is living under famine. Everyone is living under, suffering and wondering whether they can make it to the next day, which I think a lot of people may still have this perception of North Korea. In fact, it hasn't been under severe famine since the 90s. And, you know, while surprising, it is, economically doing surprisingly well, considering all the cards it's been dealt. It's been an incredibly closed country for the past 6 years now, and you can see this in various factors when you go around Pyongyang. You can see it in the people themselves. So, many of them have. It was normal for a lot of people in Pyongyang to have smartphones before, but you still saw a lot of people not using smartphones, using older types of phones. But when I last went there in 2025, it was very clear that smartphones were the norm, and they had also got used to using smartphones, as in they were taking pictures and videos of us as we were taking pictures and videos of them. It was much more of a smartphone culture. Unfortunately, I will say, because no one really likes the smartphone culture.
I
Um,
was gonna say a lot. I
you
feel
know,
like a lot of
people,
people over here are starting to think about going backwards and going more retro with their cell
yeah.
phones.
Listen, it happens all the time. I see this so many times in culture, styles of parenting, things like this. Whereas we think that we used to have this kind of ideal in the West, and then the East may starting to be look at the West and be like, oh, hey, look at that's how they're doing it. We should start doing it like that. Whereas already in the West, we're like, oh yeah, no, actually, we're not doing it so great. You guys were doing it better, so we're gonna go, and it's just completely
Well,
messed
I
up.
found it with like people wanting land and wanting well, it's like you raise a
Oh,
family, you go
interesting.
get land, you go kind of separate yourself a little bit. You live in tribes of sorts. You still live around people because we know we need people, but you're not as much of a city living species as much, or I guess at least people aren't seeming to enjoy it. There's just like a mass exodus of people from like the big cities into the southeast, into
Interesting.
more rural areas of the country. But they're still finding cities in those pockets, but they're still looking for more land, more
Mm,
of a
mm,
community in that regard. And once again, that seems like a major shift where everybody just shifted towards going to be as close to cities as possible for the jobs and the opportunities, and now people are shifting away from that. Also comes as a result of being able to work remote and do everything else remotely as well.
very
But
true.
to your point, values change and adjust as time goes on, and you realize you've done certain things right, and you realize you've done certain things wrong, and we all adjust and
Yeah,
we learn as we continue to grow. Um,
definitely.
when so if the marathon is not happening, I'm assuming they've just cut off all tourism for now. Is that correct?
So, a very important point about the marathon is that it was never tourism. So, for the
Right.
marathon, it was always a special delegation, and we had special delegation visas. It was never tourism pre 2020. The only time that North Korea opened for tourism was in March, February 2020 for a place called Rason. It's in the northeast. Don't ask me why they opened there. It's this special economic zone, and they opened it for a couple of weeks, but then closed it abruptly afterwards. Again, don't ask me why. Um, but apart from that, tourism hasn't been a thing in North Korea for the past 6 years. Previously, it was very open to tourism to a certain extent.
Yep.
Compared to what most people might think about North Korea, you could go generally quite freely. It was easy to get the visa. You could travel around the whole country for a month if you wanted to. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't see the North Korea tourism outlook as a very positive one, unfortunately.
Got it. Got it. So are you planning trips to other countries then, if you're not going to be in North Korea in the near future?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So for the past few years, I've been working on creating new destinations. So one of the most one of the most popular ones, honestly, my favorite is Afghanistan. It's an incredible destination. I can talk for hours on that, so best not to get me started. But Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. I'm also looking at some other destinations that maybe I can't speak about yet. But if you follow me, you'll see those destinations pop up over the next few months.
So even with the war going on currently,
Yep.
there's still tourism into these countries at this time.
So, no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
You can visit as a tourist, but I work for a tour company and we don't put those kind of risks out there. So we've been running these Afghanistan and tours in the Middle East for about 2 or 3 years now.
Okay.
And we did just have to cancel one of the Afghanistan trips. It was meant to be going pretty much in a couple of days. I was meant to be in Kabul, and just a couple of days ago, just yesterday, actually, there was another bombing in Kabul. And so, yeah, this is just one of those things where we have a safety threshold, right?
Yep.
These countries are very volatile,
This is
and
the
we have to take
irresponsible period.
exactly,
Okay. Got
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So there
So,
is a line that is drawn here, which I think for a while there I was like, I don't know if they actually draw a line. Do they just go? And maybe people
no.
are that adventurous. Like I'm adventurous, but I'm definitely not that adventurous at the end of the day.
Yeah, listen, it's a business, and we want to be responsible, and the safety of the people that we take is number one.
Right.
we work in these very interesting countries, but we always put safety as number one. And if there's ever any situation that would make us feel like it's unstable or that we can't guarantee the safety, then nah, we're out.
Understood. Understood.
Mm.
Um, I do have a few more Afghanistan questions, but I'm going to kind of transition into Taiwan right now, since this
Mm.
is a bit of a talking point, especially in the West. Um, Taiwan has been a target of China's for a very long time. That is obviously public information. There's no hiding that. It seems like over the last couple days, there's been an escalation of sorts in military aircraft surrounding Taiwan. Just from your third-party perspective, obviously you live there, but this is your home base. I guess you could say it's your home base.
Yes.
Um,
Mm.
what has been the sentiment around all of this in Taiwan?
Maybe one word that I would use, it depends who you speak to, but perhaps apathy.
Okay.
They've lived with this for their whole life.
Right.
And there's definitely a sense of, if China come over, that what can we do?
Right.
Um, it definitely depends on who you speak to. I will honestly say that, and generally the younger population are very pro Taiwan independence.
Right.
They're very much, everyone would fight for their country. Everyone is, quite, what's the word?
Patriotic.
Um, Patriotic, yeah, the younger generation is very patriotic. Again, not literally everyone, but this is the stereotypes and the general trends that you
Right.
see. But amongst the older generation, you do get a mixture of sentiment. Some of them would prefer to be part of China. Economically, it makes more sense in a lot of ways. Culturally, they're starting to create their own Taiwanese culture. I will say one of the biggest problems that Taiwan faces trying to be an independent nation is it has no distinctive Taiwanese culture. I always ask people this question: what is Taiwanese? What I would ask you that question: what is Taiwanese? There is one thing that people always say, and well, there is one thing that everyone knows about, but they don't know that it's Taiwanese, and
Yeah.
that is that is bubble tea, boba, you
Is
know?
is Taiwanese.
Yes,
Good to know.
but but that's their problem,
So
is
that's
that
Taiwanese
nobody
culture,
knows
right? So
that it's
basically, you're saying that boba is Taiwanese culture. That
but
might be the title of the podcast, just so people can search for that to get to that this particular part of the podcast. So,
Yeah, but they have no cultural exports. They have chips, like they have big chip
yep.
manufacturing and things like that.
Which is the
But in
strategic
terms
pivot
of,
for us, especially
right,
that's all that gets discussed is semiconductors and the chips that are created in Taiwan.
yeah, and it's politically important as well, because one of the main reasons why the US might defend Taiwan is because of the chips. But now TSMC, the main chips manufacturers, they have a factory in Arizona, I believe, in the US. So for me, that was a very silly move from Taiwan, because it takes away the why would the US protect Taiwan? It takes away a little bit of a part of that, because the US now have that in Arizona, the physical factory.
I think more than anything,
So
we also just would not want. And to your point, that was a big. It's been a big conversation over the last decade. It was like we need to start producing more. I don't really know where the numbers are at this point, but it's like we've started to get back to it in America,
mm,
but we still wouldn't want China to have full control of the semiconductors, the chip manufacturers in Taiwan. So regardless, we wouldn't want them to have that capacity as well.
yep,
And once again, this is not my area of expertise at all, but it's just observation over the years. It's been discussed for a very long time, and
yeah,
I know how strategic Taiwan is to America and to China and to everybody in the entire world. But ideally, this war does not escalate to a point where China gets pissed off enough, and they're like, "Well, let's go take a next step and let's go invade Taiwan. You invaded Iran, we're going to invade Taiwan." So
mm,
hopefully that doesn't happen here shortly. But it's been a major concern, obviously, from a geopolitical perspective for the United States for a very long time. But it's just become more and more of a topic of conversation as of the past
yeah,
few weeks, especially.
yeah, and it has done in Taiwan too. I will say that, generally speaking, when I first moved there a few years ago, people were a little less. it's been like this for years. We're kind of used to it. Whereas now it's becoming more of a topic of conversation, but still the general feel is, what can we do?
Right. Well, I think that's across the board. I think everybody has kind of gotten to that level to a certain degree. It's like, well, what
Mm,
can we do? Like, we can discuss these things all
yeah.
day long, and I still do. I still love discussing them. I think more than anything, bringing awareness to all these topics and all these ideas
Mm,
and situations is very important. But we still live in a world where we can't affect change in every single area. So it is important to focus on certain things and to try to support certain organizations and do the things that you know are
yeah.
going to bring about positive change. Not to get on that soapbox, but I feel like nowadays, I feel like everybody has a sense of apathy about everything. It's just like there's so much going on all the time, and
And
we're also
listen, it's a
bombarded with all this
survival.
information online. So,
Yes.
what do you want me to focus on?
Next.
What should I focus on?
It's a survival method. Humans are not meant to be worrying about things that are going on in a country thousands of miles away. Humans are meant to be worrying about their neighbors, right? And this sense of apathy is in a way a survival method. What are the Taiwanese supposed to do? They're supposed to worry every day and not be able to work because they're so full of worry and so full of fear. No, people just survive, get on with the day. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. What else is going on your end? So I guess I'm not concerned here, but my question for you from like a work perspective is if these places are shut down, what does the next 6 months look like for Zoe?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Aside from the
And
PhD and
also,
everything else, and that's obviously a job in and of itself.
I have fingers in a lot of pies, I have to say. Honestly, I'm glad to have been able to slow down a little bit because for the next couple of months at least, I hope to be able to focus on some more video creation and focusing on my individual channels because I've been able to spend a lot of time in these countries for the past 6 months. I've only spent about 2 weeks in Taiwan because I've been traveling so much. And that means I've created a lot of content of all these places. I have so many cool series in the pipeline. I just need to get them out there. So I'm happy about that. And also, the reason why I'm now starting new destinations as well is exactly because of this. We started the new destinations in the Middle East because North Korea was closed. And now the Middle East has problems. So honestly, I'm looking to branch out into a lot more areas, hoping that the world doesn't close down.
Understood.
Hoping that there's not another pandemic.
Yeah, it's of course. Is it all still going to be adventure tourism focused?
Yes.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't be going into like a normal European country or okay. What about like
I mean, no.
okay. What about like a this is still pretty normal. What about like a Georgia or an Armenia or an Azerbaijan or like
Yes.
okay.
We actually already do trips to those
Okay.
destinations. Yeah. So yeah, very interesting. We have a Caucasus trip. So it's not
Okay.
my area, but the company that I work for, Courier Tours, like they do that kind of stuff, and also Central Asia. So that's really big at the moment. Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan is a weird one.
Yep.
But for me, it's definitely more these misunderstood countries. And to create new destinations in these places that requires you to go there and do these research trips and to also do a lot of reading on these places, as an individual and also as a tour company. It's not that we just set up a new place just for the sake of it. It's something that we're passionate about and something that we ourselves have interest and knowledge about as well. So it's doing all these research for these places, going there physically, building up partnerships, that kind of thing. And that requires a lot of time and effort.
I'm
Mm.
sure. I'm sure. Um, I because it's coming to mind, and as I think about these locations too, I feel like more and more of them are becoming at risk with spreading conflicts around the world. But like Russia and Ukraine kind of come to mind as well as spots. I'm not sure if that's of consideration as well. Okay.
Yeah,
And as you,
yeah, I
and
mean,
as you nod your head, I'm just like I don't want to like get in front of something you might share here soon, but but I
no,
also
no,
think about it more.
yeah.
I'm like every single country might be kind of conflict adjacent in the next 6 months. So what do you really do at that point?
And that's where you have to question, how safety is all relative, and you can only, you can't predict the future, and you can only travel as safe as possible. And as a tour company and as an individual myself, you have to toss up okay, is it safe to bring people here? Isn't it safe to bring people here? And yeah, you just kind of have to weigh up those measurements. I mean, recently when I was in Syria a few weeks ago, and that was exactly when the war started, with Israel, US, and Iran. And at that point, we were probably in the safest country around because there are no US military bases in Syria, and so in Syria, we felt relatively safe, which is hilarious to say because historically that's one of the most unsafe, or, people might presume that's one of the most unsafe places in the region. But we then had to create a plan to evacuate out of Jordan instead of Lebanon because the morning that we were due to leave Syria and go into Lebanon, that then Beirut got bombed. And so, it was a surreal experience visiting Palmyra, which is a very, very famous site in Syria, and seeing missiles fly over. Very surreal indeed. But yeah, these things are part of the job, and unfortunately, I think I thrive in the chaos.
I that term "thrive in chaos" is something I've used a lot as of late. I'm just like, that is my
Yeah,
new slogan, my new tagline. I might even use that for the show, honestly. But I feel like
excellent.
we all just have to figure out how to thrive in the chaos. Some people purposefully put themselves in chaos and or situations that could be considered chaotic or quote unquote irresponsible to others. But I kudos to you for even bringing that up because I feel like that is my slogan as of the past 2 years. Just figure out a way to thrive in the chaos.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add that might be beneficial to people as they're trying to wrap their minds around current events, especially as somebody that does thrive in chaos and has been to these countries and experienced as much as you have? What would you maybe want to leave people with that would help them to better, once again, better thrive in the chaos?
I would say choose your chaos. You know, we can only thrive in so much chaos. Um, choose your battles, listening to the music, listening to the media, listening to the news every morning is tough. And it's very tough when you don't have a context in which to understand it as well. I was watching the news about the Middle East, and the war when I was sat in a hotel in Syria. And again in Jordan, when you are right in the middle of it and you're watching the news, and it's not the environment that you're in is making you fearful. You can hear fighter jets going across, you can see missiles. It makes you fearful a little bit, but it's when you turn on the media, and for someone who's sitting in that context and has a bigger understanding than someone who may be sitting in somewhere in the US watching the news, for me, if I'm getting scared of the news, even though I'm sat there and understanding more about what's going on, it must be horrific for someone in the US without that physical context, without having ever been there or in any of these kind of situations. So I would just say, balance it out. Maybe if you're watching something in the media about the war or something horrific going on in a country, then spend 10 minutes learning about the country just for the sake of it. Why not? Read a book about it, read some literature on it, watch a YouTube video about a traveler on it. I don't know, something like that.
There's lots of really good content. I know somebody that creates good content about these areas, so maybe you should go listen to her
There you
stuff.
go.
I
Uh,
kind of started with this, but I wanna wrap up with this final question and comment about people that maybe are critical of what you do and or have done.
mhm.
Um, what is your comment to them about, and especially for me, this is maybe it's a way of me just protecting myself here as well and making myself feel better about having this conversation about these countries that you're going into. But I guess what is the best way to respond to people that are critical of the work that you do at the end of the day?
I completely understand it. I completely understand people who are critical about what I do. And I would just say that it's a different way of doing things. I find a lot of people are critical about, for example, me going to Afghanistan. And as a woman, how can I go to Afghanistan when it's a country that, is so terrible against women's rights, doesn't let women go to school, all of this. And one thing that I find very interesting, I'm happy to listen to criticism, and I understand completely the ethical complexities surrounding visiting these countries. Personally, I just make sure that my visit is as ethical as possible. I believe in ethical tourism to these complex destinations for many reasons, and I can outline all of those. But one thing that I find very interesting is the amount of people that have a very big voice telling me that I shouldn't be going to these countries because of the ethical issues, but they don't do anything themselves. So, for sure, if you have an issue with me going to Afghanistan because of the women not being able to go to schools because of the, terrible malnutrition, all of this, then do something about it. You know, donate to a charity or find your own way. Go volunteer teaching refugees English. There are many ways that you can go about helping the situation instead of just arguing with someone against what they're doing on social media. This is my way to assist the situation. I work directly with Afghan women. I help various charities there. We visit orphanages, we visit NGOs, women-led businesses, initiatives, not only to just visit and show our support, but also to actively support them, buy from them, spread the word about them. And they really appreciate having our presence there. And it kind of it means a lot to them. And I think that's my way. I could sit at home and I could donate to charity, or I could teach refugees English. I could find any other way that I feel. But for me, this is just my way of doing it. And other people, humanitarian organizations, they have a different way of doing it too. Yeah.
I appreciate that answer, and I think more than you know, because I know for a fact that there's a lot of critical individuals on this side of the world that, and upon even releasing the first one, they're like, "Well, why do you give airtime to someone who visits these countries?" Right? And I think it's just really good for people to understand that side of it from you, especially because there is a huge ethical piece of this. And back to the whole humanity conversation, these are still humans in another part of the world, and it's good for us to really understand what's going on before we are critical of a situation we don't fully understand and a person that we don't
Yeah.
fully understand as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get it. It's so weird. I could not imagine coming across someone on a reel when I'm just flicking through Instagram. Oh, this girl's just like dancing, parading around in Afghanistan. Oh, this girl's like talking to military guys in North Korea. I would be like, what? But if you take a little minute, 30 seconds to just try and understand the bigger context of it, that's what I try and do.
I love it. I love it. Well, Zoe, thank you so much for the time this evening, this morning for you, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate the perspective, the context, the information, the insights, and hopefully we'll continue these conversations as things progress. Ideally, the world calms down a bit and things do kind of open up, so you can continue doing the work that you're doing. Um, but
Inshallah.
um, but I don't know. We'll see what happens here soon.
I'm still waiting to bring you to one of these destinations. Maybe Afghanistan is on the cards for you.
I think it might be, and I am really looking forward to having that conversation as well. That's definitely an offline conversation, but I
Excellent.
am pumped for this one to say the least. I've got a group of potentially
Excellent.
5 or 6 other individuals that would be on board with joining too. So,
Okay. Okay,
I'm
let's talk.
looking forward
Excellent.
to it. Awesome. Well, thank you again for your
Awesome.
time, and look forward to staying connected.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.